everyone, so my name is Danila. I'm the head of sales in GammaStack and Gamma Plus, and today as well with me, my good friend and a professional in the iGaming industry, Rohini Sardana, the founder and the CEO of Wise Wager. And today's topic will be what really drives success in the iGaming platforms. So this one is done. And let's go one by one with sections, with the questions that, if you don't mind, I will be adding from time to time as well my comments. Okay? Cool, yeah. Okay, then let's get started with the first major idea, and this is the speed of the markets. And speed to the markets as well. So, Rohini, why has speed to the market become such a decisive factor for new iGaming brands today?
Firstly, Danila, thank you for having me here, and definitely excited to have partnered with GammaStack and yourself. When we're talking about speed to market, I remember when I was working in the UK retail environment, there was always a rush to be first. And the idea was that if you launched your product or a new feature set first, that you'd grab player attention cycles. Now, that hasn't particularly changed, that is still valid, but speed to market for me, especially based on digital releases, if you like, is no longer about being first, it's about being early enough to matter. And that's a slight perspective change, because we're online, there are less CapEx requirements compared to retail, for instance. And why is that important, you ask? Well, regulatory windows, for example, if you're operating in a regulated jurisdiction, there's acquisition costs are important, and player attention cycles are tighter than ever. We're no longer competing with just a brand for end users' attention. You've got Netflix, you've got TikTok. All these digital platforms are competing for that attention. So if you miss the early window, you don't just delay revenue, you lose momentum, right? And that is very hard to recover from later, and it becomes very costly. So,
all right.
And to add to that, alongside my advisory and consultancy work with early stage and scaling gaming brands, we recently supported the latest brand that we collaborated on through platform selection and go live, where I recommended GammaStack and a couple of key integrations based on their specific operational needs, right? And the brand's needs. From that experience, going live relatively quickly has allowed the brand to capture early users, to also migrate existing users onto the new platform before his acquisition costs escalate, right? And they're now able to validate those integrations and the user flows with real players, as opposed to building in isolation. So,
indeed,
right, yeah. And the last point I want to make here is, in today's environment, speed is effectively risk management.
True. Honestly saying, with such an open answer, I don't have anything else to add to this, except for the fact that indeed we managed to build a wonderful brand, and looking forward to see the success of that. And to add on to this, maybe you can speak about the biggest bottlenecks that delays the launches. What exactly affects it so much?
Given my technical product and commercial background over nearly 2 decades in the industry, I've come to realize that the bottlenecks are rarely just technical alone. They're usually driven by slow commercial alignment and unclear pricing structures. So providers over-promising on integrations they don't fully control, for example, right? Especially, there's a lot of third-party integrations that are required to get a custom deployment, if you like, especially for a brand like the one we've just launched. And if you don't control that entire end-to-end process, which you can't, then fragmented vendor coordination, especially around payments and onboarding cause delays, right? And of course, then if you have inflexible commercial terms, the approval cycles get longer. So all of these aspects are not just technical, and they can cause delays. So where GammaStack moved fast was in this early alignment stage and commercial clarity right from the first step. And that's been very useful for all of us involved.
Yes, indeed. And just adding 5 cents from my end in that sense, in my perspective, working in sales and selling the platforms to a wide variety of the clients, I believe what also is very, very important, speaking from the side of the platform, is being transparent with the client. Closing a deal is, of course, a main target for us, people of sales and people of platform, obviously. However, being open with the customer and speaking about the timelines openly and explaining why it happens like this makes the trust even stronger between you and the operator, which tries the success later on down the line when the project is live. And from my perspective, I would rather say the actual number of 4 or 5 months because this and that factors, instead of actually trying to promise 2 months or 3 months, but already knowing that it is impossible. So, and especially working with professional clients like the one that we are working with you together, I believe he would understand if I would be lying about any time frames in that sense, because he already faced this previously. And it's interesting about the time frames itself. What's in your opinion, based on all of your experience, what's the ideal launch time looks like in today's competitive market?
First of all, every geo or jurisdiction has its nuances here, right? In terms of what is competitive from an ideal launch timeline. So for a serious operator today, especially one with custom integrations that they require, I would say 8 to 12 weeks from contract to live is fairly competitive. That includes and should include the core platform, priority integrations around content and onboarding, and of course payments. So without these three elements, you can't really go live. And again, if somebody is promising a week to go live or 2 weeks, then you're getting a white label solution, right? Nobody can code that fast and provide a custom integration because you have, as I said earlier, very little control over the third-party vendors. So their own timeline will dictate how quickly you can go live. So some serious coordination is required. And then, of course, if it's an existing brand that's migrating existing users, that transition work can extend beyond that 12-week time frame, but you need the platform live in order to migrate. So I would say that's kind of my benchmark of a realistic execution, and it only works when it's disciplined.
Fair point. Yeah, from the perspective of the platform development, I also agree that 3 months time, 12 weeks time is more than enough to launch the project with some certain level of customization. I must admit that sometimes the fantasy of some customers is flying so high that even 6 months won't be enough to fulfill everything. But in here we are making the approach of phases, because showing as well to your end customers the opportunity of growth and make them to wait for something new to appear within a month, 2 or 3 after the launch is also kind of an interesting and, in my opinion, my humble opinion would be an professional, I would say, approach. And outside of the timelines and particularly maybe some set of available integrations, what else should the operator look for in a platform provider to ensure the faster deployment? What else can be there?
Very interesting question, because there's a lot of hype and PR around in our industry around what a provider solution can do, right? So, and of course, there's a lot of marketing around that. So So when I work with brands, I have an internal vetting process and a framework that I use where especially when I'm curating the entire tech stack for a brand's go-to-market strategy. So for somebody like myself, the first interaction really is around securing a deal for myself, right? So for example, if that process is going to take forever or there's a lot of back and forth, then it's generally a good indicator of how the platform is going to deal with brand and interact, right? Because again, it's a commercial negotiation. So that gives me very early on an indication of how they might operate with the brand. And then after that, from a brand's perspective, I have found in my experience that three things matter the most. First is execution history rather than roadmap promises. So I will always ask for proof points and go onto those websites or mobile apps and test them myself to see how they work, and how quickly the product is responding to a user experience, whether I want to settle bets or if I want to withdraw cash, for instance, and what my options are. So I do a bit of product due diligence. Second is around integration ownership, knowing exactly what the provider controls versus the third parties is very important. And that was one of the key strengths for GammaStack in this particular collaboration. So you and I had a few conversations where, I kind of looked a little bit deeper into a gap analysis, right, around what the requirements were, what types of integrations you had, and if you didn't have them, whether you knew of those providers already, and then whether you had skill sets to integrate from an engineering perspective. And then, of course, the third element to this is commercial clarity early, so that delivery isn't slowed down by renegotiation mid-build. And I think all of these three aspects are important, and speed comes from an alignment in all of these three, not just engineering capacity.
Fair point. And yes, indeed. And again, I told you that already many times, and I respect when the consultant or the potential operator himself are actually digging deep into the details, because it gives much more clarity than just the words and promises. So I really respect this approach. And since we should touch base actually the commercial part, so I guess the next major topic of our discussion would be interesting to cover why platform providers must be price competitive and commercially flexible. And I believe that according to what I see, that nowadays for platforms, the price competitiveness considered to be a baseline expectations rather than differentiator. What's your opinion about that?
I mean, if I go back through time, there weren't as many brands or providers, right, platform providers. In the last 10 years, we've seen an explosion of even B2Cs becoming platform providers. So overall, I would say that operators and people wanting to enter this space are a lot better informed, and margins are under pressure. So price is no longer about being cheap, but it is about it's not being a blocker. So everybody can be competitive, but if your pricing is out of line with the operator's needs and their budget, for example, the operator or the brand owner won't then enter serious discussions. And this is where somebody like myself can come in and help them by assessing what's out there and, working through, again, based on their not just technical needs, go-to-market needs, the jurisdictions they want to be in, and the pricing that is available within those markets. Because the way platforms, products and services are priced in Asia is very different to how they're priced in very highly regulated jurisdictions, and even within them in continents, it's very different. So in the last 10 years, as I said, we've seen very competitively priced white label solutions. But in my experience, many of these brands and deals struggle to go beyond maybe 2 years, often because the underlying commercials and the technical foundations aren't built for scale. and this is a double-edged sword. Do you get to market quickly, but then in 2 years you find maybe the operator is moving brands, right, and moving platforms? So the real differentiators today are delivery of speed, flexibility, and a partnership mindset, and that's key.
Very structured answer. Thank you very much, and I completely agree with that. And from our experience as well, we can see that nowadays operators are increasingly moving from an idea of just a fast go live with the product as it is towards something more flexible, something that makes them more different from other ones. Because again, through the past 10 years, the whole world of iGaming got fulfilled with operators, brands, platforms, game providers, and nowadays, to stay competitive, you need to offer something that differs you. And in our case, as you know, we also are working in an ownership model, so our so-called source code selling model, and that's also what makes our offer interesting, and also what makes more opportunities for the customer, because every customer can start on one level and scale up to the next level, up into the ownership. And in your opinion, why do you think this kind of a shift actually happened? Is it a natural progress or just requirements of the time?
I think typically operators want control of the unit economics, right? How much margin are they making per stake and per user, for instance, and predictability, and they also want predictability as they scale. The other elements that they require optionality across markets and products, because not every market that they might operate in is the same. So if they have one platform and that platform can't be flexible enough, both in technical product and commercial availability, they're likely to move. But yeah, and of course, there's a lot of elements that have affected this kind of shift, if you like, because there's more tech available, right, now to build and deploy. So when you look at pricing from that perspective, very rigid minimum guarantees and pure rev share models can often punish success. We've seen this across major providers who are focused on purely monthly minimums, and you hear of brands ditching them after 2 years. So as brands mature, they want cost structures that improve rather than get worse. And again, having sold sports books and platforms myself, we've had to get creative based on the jurisdiction that we're selling in, to understand what the market norms are and what the brands will effectively want to sign up to. So so a lot of that maturity, if you like, from a brand is what's driving this hybrid milestone or even modular pricing now. And for established tier 2s, even tier 1 operators, eventual source code ownership is often becoming a priority, probably around year 4, where they feel that they are now giving too much value to the platform and they want to retain a significant part of that chunk. So for me, it's a strength that GammaStack has this option of buying the source code built into the commercials from day one. There are others that have talked about it, but again, their commercial structure is not as competitive in my view.
Okay. And in your opinion, this kind of a commercial structure with an opportunity to become the owner of your own brand platform that will pull eventually from your business is something will be the most successful approach in next few years, or there are some alternatives that might actually be very, very interesting for the operators?
Very good point, because I think AI is likely going to change a lot of that. For instance, right, just on a licensing perspective, and not necessarily from a gambling platform, but when you are selling licenses, it's on a human seat basis, right? How many people will access X, whatever that X is. But with agents, is it going to switch to how many agents are going to use your system? So I don't know what the future of pricing might look like where a completely AI-driven solution is available, right? Of course, they have tokens, etc. So there is a cost to deploying those solutions, which might have to be covered by the platform provider and or the operator as a baseline. But I see the structures changing. But back to your point around IP ownership, I don't think that's going to change. I've seen this cycle come about, and I speak to a lot of CEOs and CTOs, and what happens in my experience is, let's say today you don't own the IP, then you get 4 or 5 years later, restructure happens, a new CTO comes in and they want everything built in-house. So they'll start that process of building the platform. So if you don't have the option to buy the IP, then, if you do have the option to buy the IP, that makes it easier because everybody's familiar with the tech stack, right? You've got engineers that are already using that tech stack. And if there's knowledge transfer, that helps. And that should be part of the process of when you're selling the source code. But again, a lot of it goes down to unit economics and how good the platform is for scale. So if you have built your technology stack in that way that allows for IP ownership, then you absolutely should offer that from day one.
Well, very, very interesting, especially about the AI powering the platform, and actually maybe helping out with some parts of the process. That's what we also expecting to see very, very soon on our platform, and in general in the industry. We already see how it changes the game. And right now, if you're using AI, or at least the word AI, even in your speech, people are starting to relate to you in more positive way, let's say. But still, knowing the process, being there many times across multiple markets, I know by heart that platform is a piece of the success story itself. Outside of it, from the technical perspective, which in my opinion is around maybe 40 to 50% of the success, and the platform I would say is around maybe 30%, and the rest 20 would be the third-party integrations. So why do you think integrations sit at the core of the iGaming success today?
I mean, because iGaming is no longer one system, right? It's an entire ecosystem, and there are providers that focus on very niche elements, and in my view that is the right approach. You can't do everything all at once really well. So you might build over time your capability and what you can offer, but both as a founder builder and as somebody who sold products before, you've got to remain focused on what your core technical skill set is and what your vision was originally. I've seen a lot of platform providers come to the market where they want to be everything to everybody.
It's complicated.
You can't do that. You can't do that. That is built over time unless you bought it, with deep pockets. So it's not just one system now. As I said, it's an ecosystem. So therefore, having integrations that allow you and improve your core basis is important.
Okay, and we all know that every single platform has its own limits as well, in one way or another. But in terms of the integrations, what do you think would be the consequences that operators will face in the first 6 to 12 months because of these limitations of the offer of the platform? What potentially can they face?
Higher payment friction, for instance, right? limited content differentiation. I mean, there's from a white label provider perspective, I think last year I was doing some analysis around the number of brands in the UK, for instance, right? Licensed brands. And 7 of them had the same layout, same look and feel, but very little differentiation. Great for the B2B provider, that they've got so many clients. But I did wonder, where's the differentiation? Like, everything looks the same and it's a little bit mediocre, from what I saw, versus a brand that has spent time in building its onboarding and its UX and its offering. So operators will typically face either higher payment friction, limited differentiation, what does that lead to? Poor retention, right?
Exactly.
And also missed affiliate opportunities, right? So in many cases, overall growth flatlines in this scenario before marketing has even ramped up. That's what happens.
Yeah, and especially I agree about the retention part, because acquisition is important, especially in the first days and in general for the growth of the business. But to the actual retention, the loyalty of the players and the loyalty level that you're receiving, that you're achieving, that's, I guess, what actually means the success of this business. And basically closing this topic about integrations for operators choosing a platform today, what signals tell them a provider truly has the deep integration capabilities rather than just a basic plug-and-play setup? What are these signals? What they can check initially, like you did with us?
Same things, proven live integrations rather than logos on a nice website, right? Second thing is clear ownership of delivery timeframes. You and I had enough conversations around that where I double checked that, because it's important that I'm able to, if a brand is coming to me for help, the last thing I want to do is send them down a route that isn't viable for them. So I always put my product hat on, my integration hat on, and ask those questions. And again, do your due diligence, right? Key elements, for example, I can tease out are the ability to customize flows rather than just integrating and connecting APIs, right? And then real examples of multi-vendor coordination. So a really useful point for me during our journey was, the brand owner asked, I asked you, do you have X? And you said yes. And then my next question was, well, how long will the integration take? And when you responded, well, all we need is the key to enable the API to connect, I was like, right, they've done this before. Because you don't have the commercial relationship with the third-party vendor, that will still live with the brand, but you already understand that it's sitting in your system, and to enable it, you need that commercial key unlocked effectively, right? So that in my mind was a tick box. Equally, because we are now also seeing AI-powered solutions, again, there are questions that you can ask that tell you instinctively whether or not somebody is just presenting marketing fluff or actually has elements of AI integrated or capabilities that they're selling. So going back to how I operate, again, I use a framework always to help brands prioritize what matters most. Then I identify vendors that fit those priorities, and there's always trade-offs, right? You can't optimize for speed, cost, and quality at the same time unless you have very deep pockets. I'm being honest about those trade-offs up front, which you touched on, right? Transparency makes that vetting process much more effective. And for me to put a provider forward as one of my recommendation lists, these are the elements that I would expect. And if I don't get that, then it's not often that I would put them forward.
Oh, thank you, Rohini. Thank you for such a precise answer on that side. I really hope that a lot of people, a lot of operators will hear this answer of yours and will take your recommendations for the further consideration. Dig deep into the details is not a use of spending of time. It's actually what will identify the differences, the actual differences between the platforms. Definitely.
There's also a key element to this, which I would encourage platform providers to allow access to their tech stack and products to people like myself, right? Consultants within the industry. Effectively, we're an extended arm for you, and finding the right fit is key. So if I can understand what you have to offer, it may not be right for every brand that I have access to, but you never know when that brand might decide, right, I've changed my... So it could be maybe you don't start with that brand, but in 2 years' time, if they do want to move, I'll know for sure, okay, X platform provider did this at that time, and therefore it's relevant. So, I find sometimes some providers are very cagey, and that always makes me question, why are you so cagey, right? What's your secret sauce? Now, I understand, trade secrets, IP, etc., but we are not going to, my intention is never to steal that. It's more to understand what's available in the market so I can match them up with the right brands.
True, yeah. And if you have a question to us, you can always text. I'm always happy to give you all the details as I can.
No, as much as I can. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I guess then to wrap up the discussion about the scaling of the success, I guess then there is a question of current momentum, so to say, and what's the trend right now, and what's going on here with some specific product, I would say.
Well, maybe we can talk about Gamma's sweepstakes platform. Should we do that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Cool.
Let's cover it up.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, not least because there's a lot of news coming up from the US. But before I delve into my questions, maybe it's a good opportunity for you to just introduce to the audience what a sweepstakes product might actually look like. What is it?
Well, there is a lot of different representations of what is sweepstake product itself. How I prefer to name it to my customers when they're asking this question to me, I'm saying that it is something in between of fun and adult entertainment in the iGaming, let's say. Because for me, sweepstake is actually the business that is laid right in the middle between a social aspect of the iGaming and the actual gambling aspect of the iGaming. So this is in my opinion, this is currently a perfect mix of it. And regarding the Gamma Sweep itself, so just to tell to the audience, most probably someone who already explored the sweepstake market definitely heard about this name. And this is our company, our brand that is coming from US with its origins, thanks to our team there, and who actually inspired the whole project. And throughout the past 2 years, a little bit more than 2 years, it became a successful independent brand that has its own audience and its own clients. So this is what I can tell briefly about sweepstake and Gamma Sweep in particular.
Thank you. From the news, obviously, US massive market, you mentioned you have a team there. Again, every day I see certain states trying to prohibit sweepstakes or change what the definition of sweeps is. So based on that, are you seeing more new brands entering sweepstakes or existing operators expanding their model? What's driving that shift?
Well, I would say that there's a lot of new brands who are trying to access it, first things first. And why specifically in the United States? Because there, this business is already well established and the audience is prepared for it. However, currently nowadays, a sweepstake is no longer just bordered with North America. It's already getting beyond that. It's getting to Europe and further to the east side of the world. So, and we're actually looking forward how it will expand in the different markets, different countries, and even different continents. But yeah, initially the origins, of course, is coming from USA, and still people believe that there is a plenty of opportunity to operate there because it's a legit official business and it's a safe to operate, which is kind of a complicated question always about the United States with all its terms, policies, and even per state regulations. So, and even because of the per state regulations, this is something that allows still the freedom. Yes, indeed, some state might forbid or start to regulate the sweepstake, but there is still a plenty, or 40 plus, if I'm not mistaken, states which are still considered to be a great opportunity for the sweepstake brands, and that's why a lot of people are going there. A lot of brands from Europe that started a real money casino business initially, looking for this direction right now and actually expanding there.
So sweepstakes is not going away, and with that, obviously, you are seeing increasing competition, I imagine, right? Especially amongst brands. In your experience, what would you say are the biggest challenges sweepstakes operators are facing today when it comes to scalability, maybe compliance flow, and of course, player retention?
Well, I would say that the biggest complication in the acquisition and in the retention is that sometimes the operators are forgetting that still the sweepstake is initially considered to be used as a social aspect. So the social aspect of the business is very, very important. That's why you can find that majority of traffic is for the sweepstake businesses nowadays is generated not from the affiliates, it's generated from the social media, from Meta, from Snapchat, from TikTok, potentially everything, because it's a legit and it's official, and it has its own origin in the social entertainment. So that's something that makes it very important to work on your social media, to work on your campaigns, to promote it actively, and not just rely on affiliates and the traffic sources that will just give you what is possible. That's what I can say from my experience and what I know.
Wow, okay. And brands typically do have social teams, right? So
yes.
What you're essentially saying is own that funnel rather than relying on an affiliate. Thinking about that then, why did GammaStack decide to build a dedicated product like GammaSweep instead of offering sweepstakes just as another feature within the casino platform?
Well, as far as I know the history, I really hope that I'm fully correct in what I will say right now. Initially, it was a product that we were selling as a source code. So that was before GammaSweep. And then we got the inspiration from one of our customers, who is now the CEO of our GammaSuite company in the United States of America. He is our ex-client, and he is also the person who came up with this idea to us to build something dedicated as a platform provider for the sweepstake market. And we grabbed this opportunity because it brings us a very, very strong foundation. Why? Because it's not only our tech possibilities, but it's also the experience of an actual operator who can tell you the best how to structure the product, how to build it, and how to scale it up, than the person who is actually on the field, who is fighting with different kind of the issues every single day as an operator. Based on that, and thanks to this experience, we are capable to take this niche as a platform provider, as a dedicated platform provider for the sweepstake, and take our market share and market position.
That's a very, very interesting scenario you've kind of explained there, where one of your clients is now essentially working with you and has launched your B2B side, right? So I love that. I love the fact that your company is so open to listening and looking at opportunities, that you've even collaborated with a client. So I guess looking at it from that perspective, and the fact that you have a team established, and we're saying that sweepstakes is not going away right now, what would you say makes Gamma Sweep structurally stronger or more future ready compared to what is currently available from competitor products in the market?
Well, here, in my humble opinion, the same as what makes us different right now, the experience that is coming from our colleagues who are also operators at the same time. We are also looking into the future of expanding this product and the projects beyond the United States of America. And I'm not talking about Canada. I'm talking again about the European Union, because I already can see a few markets, big markets of Europe, which will be where we'll be actively growing the sweepstake business because of their local regulations about real money gambling. It's the opportunity for the sweepstakes, same as what happened in the US. Because of the strict regulations about real money gambling, sweepstake became such a huge thing. And the fact that we are already thinking about this and we are already working in this direction, at least in the legal field, this is already that makes us different and future ready. Because let's say if someone will come and say, I'm thinking about this particular market in Europe or a bit eastern than Europe, we will be already prepared, because I know that we are getting ready for that.
Okay. And we can't not touch on the latest hype, right, in the industry. You know where I'm going with this. It's in around prediction markets. So
yeah,
where would you place that vertical against sweepstakes? Like, what's your thoughts on either?
Well, I would say that sweepstake is something more related to casino experience. Still, if we will look at the trends and tendencies right now in the US, I would say that 90% of the profits of the business, of the interest of the players, will be casino type games, like slot games, table games, this kind of a product direction. And the prediction market, it's coming from the origins of a more like a sports betting. So I would say that eventually they might become a perfect mix. Like nowadays it's a casino plus sportsbook, then we might have a sweepstake plus prediction. As a perfect new mix, something more fresh, something more for the people that are looking for a new experience in their lives. So this is something that I believe might happen. I'm not saying that I'm sure about this, but according to these trends and tendencies, I can see that it might work out. And speaking about what we do have already Gamma Sweep, and it's a very strong platform, very strong product, very well known in the industry, and with the huge potential of growth. And I can say already out loud that prediction market is something that we are already working, and we will be able to present our initial vision with the high opportunities of growth to the audience and to our customers very, very soon. And moreover to that, we would be happy to, again, listen to our customers, get their experience, get their ideas, and fulfill them on our platform as an opportunity of scaling and being flexible.
Thank you, Daniel. I couldn't have asked for a more interesting thought process there from you. And I think on that basis, we can probably wrap up because we've covered quite a lot today.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Rohini, for participating in this session. I really enjoyed our conversation. I really hope that we will have a lot more topics to cover up in next episodes. And once again, looking forward to scale up our partnership with you to a wider extent. Thank you again, and have a nice day.
Thank you, likewise.
Yeah.